In our town, when someone says they're training for a race, they usually mean they're trying to outrun diabetes. But my wife, Kelly, had gone all in on the half-marathon dream. New shoes, new watch, even new friends, though she called them training partners, which made it sound like she was joining the Navy SEALs instead of jogging past shuttered strip malls. At first, I bought it. She came home sweaty and out of breath, logging her miles in a little app she'd downloaded. I'd nod, tell her I was proud, maybe make a joke about not pulling a hamstring. That was before I noticed two things. One, she never got any faster. She could run 6 days a week and still pace like she was chasing a loose shopping cart in the grocery store parking lot. Two, her running playlist, which she always left blaring on the counter while she showered, had turned into a greatest hits compilation of love songs. Not breakup songs, not pump-you-up songs. Full-on, can't live without you ballads. She said it was motivation. I said nothing, because I've learned that in a marriage, there are times you ask questions and times you watch silently until the answers walk right up and slap you in the face. Then came the 5K charity run. Kelly insisted I sign up, just for fun, even though I hate running unless there's a forklift chasing me. I figured I'd jog it, finish somewhere in the middle, and we'd grab pancakes after. Race day was one of those Ohio mornings where the air tastes like steel mill and frost at the same time. Kelly was in full gear, neon tights, headband, big sunglasses like she was hiding from paparazzi. She lined up at the front with her coach, some guy named Mark who had the lean, smug build of someone who thinks his abs are a public service. We took off, and I hung back, letting the real runners sprint away. Half a mile in, I saw the sign pointing us right toward the river trail. But Kelly didn't turn. She veered left, jogging toward the side street where a black sedan was idling. Mark peeled off right behind her. I slowed down, then drifted left like I was just confused about the route. No one stopped me. I kept far enough back to watch her jog straight up to the car, pop the door, and slide inside with Mark. The sedan pulled away slow and easy, like it had all the time in the world. I stood there, catching my breath, staring after them while the rest of the runners streamed past on the proper course. My brain felt cold and sharp, the way it gets when you've just confirmed something you already suspected. No yelling, no chasing, just the click of a mental stopwatch. She wasn't training for a race, she was running from me. And from that moment, I knew I wasn't going to just confront her. I was going to lap her. I didn't finish the race. Didn't even pretend to. I turned around, walked back to the starting line like a man who realized he'd left the stove on, grabbed my free banana and t-shirt, and stood by the pancake tent long enough for the volunteers to stop trying to hand me a medal. My bib still beeped when I passed the timing mat the wrong way. The kid with the clipboard frowned, like I'd broken some sacred runner code. I wanted to tell him I'd watched something more important than a personal record drive off in a black sedan, but I just said, "Wrong turn," and walked to my truck. On the ride home, the radio tried to sell me on forgiveness. The DJ ran a segment where cheated-on callers phoned in, and the host told them to seek healing. I turned it off and let the engine do the talking. It's a 2008 Tacoma with a dented bed and a stubborn check engine light that's basically part of the family now. It hummed steady, like a guy who's seen worse winters and still starts every morning. Our neighborhood looks like it got halfway to a renaissance and fell asleep. Old brick mill, new mural, cracked sidewalks, artisanal coffee. It's the kind of place where the brewery has a cornhole league and the pawn shop sells musical instruments right next to engagement rings that didn't pan out. I pulled into our driveway and sat there, watching the front door. No sedan. No Kelly. I had time. Inside, I did the thing you do when you're holding something brittle. I moved slowly. Keys on hook. Shoes by mat. The house smelled like dryer sheets, and the faint lemon of the cleaner Kelly pretends I don't notice is the cheap brand. On the counter, her phone charger coiled like a snake. The running playlist sat open on the tablet, still queued up with All of Me and Make You Feel My Love, and a dozen other songs people choose when they're trying to make bad ideas feel noble. I made coffee, because there's dignity in small rituals. I did not drink it. Instead, I took a legal pad from the junk drawer and drew 2 columns. Facts on the left, feelings on the right. It's a trick my high school guidance counselor taught me the year Dad got laid off from the plant and Mom started waitressing nights. Feelings can lie, he'd said. Facts don't have the energy. Facts. She veered off the race. She got into a car with Mark. She has a love songs playlist. She isn't getting faster despite training. She showers immediately after runs. She smiles at her phone and hides it when I walk by. Feelings. I'm a sucker. I'm a fool. I'm tired. I'm angry. I'm awake. I stared at the paper until the coffee went cold. Then I flipped the pad, wrote, plan, and numbered down the left margin. I didn't know what the last step would be yet, but I knew the first. You don't swing until you know where the jaw is. I started with Mark. Around here, you don't have to hire a private eye. You just have to go to the barber shop on a Saturday morning. Gus has been cutting hair in this town since men still asked for just like dads. If you sit long enough with a magazine you don't read, the town will walk by in mirrors. I took the next open chair. Same as usual, I said. Gus draped the cape and set to work with the clippers. He's not a talker unless you show him a dangling thread. I gave him one. You ever hear of a guy named Mark? Tall, lean, calls himself a running coach. Gus snorted. We got 5 marks who want you to know about their macros. Which one? Drives a black sedan. Trains out of Steel City Strength. That Mark. The clippers paused like a comma. Teaches classes at the gym his wife owns. Tanya. She's the boss. He's the brand. Wife owns it. Yup. Gus started up again, a soft burr. Tanya bought the place off the old owner when he moved to Florida. Smart woman. Keeps the books, runs the front desk, community outreach, all of it. Mark takes selfies with kettlebells. Their marriage solid? Gus shrugged. I cut hair, I don't cut truth. But Tanya's the kind of person who can tell you your bill went up and make you thank her. Mark's the kind of person who says, bro, to your grandfather. Make of that what you want. I tipped Gus like he'd just given me free Wi-Fi and drove to Steel City Strength. It was in a refurbished warehouse that used to stow parts for the rail yard. Now it stored Lululemon and grunts. The sign out front had bold fonts and a painted anvil. Inside, rubber floor, chalk dust, motivational quotes. Embrace the suck, one read. I had. Behind the counter, a woman in a black zip-up was running 2 computers and a phone with the efficiency of a short-order cook. Tanya, I guessed, from the ring and the air of someone who could bounce you with a smile. Can I help you? She said without looking up. Thinking of joining, I said. Do you have running coaching? Group classes mostly. We have a program for the half marathon, though. I can show you the brochure. She slid a glossy trifold my way. On the front, a photo of Mark pacing a woman on a trail, hand on the small of her back. Not Kelly. Not this time. Inside, a calendar of training blocks, a mindfulness evening, and a suggested playlist with, surprise, love songs cleverly relabeled as tempo tracks. Nice way to launder the vibe. Is that your husband? I asked, as if I didn't care either way. That's Mark. Now she looked up, friendly but cautious. He coaches endurance. He good. She gave a practiced laugh. He thinks so. Then, softer, conspiratorial. He's charismatic. It helps people show up. I nodded, as if I were one of the people who needed charisma to put on shoes. I saw the flyer for the charity 5K, I said. I think he was there. He was, she said. He loves a race day selfie. I let that hang. I'll think on the membership, I said. By the time I pulled back into my driveway, Kelly's car was there. The garage door was up. Laundry tumbling. She stood in the kitchen in an oversized hoodie, hair wet, face damp in that way a shower can't quite wash away. She smiled that automatic smile people wear when they come home from somewhere they shouldn't have been. How was your race? I asked, neutral. Good, she said, a little too bright. Tough hills. Where'd you go? I didn't see you at the finish. Wrong turn, I said, pouring my cold coffee down the drain. We both listened to it gurgle away. But I got a t-shirt. Her eyes flicked to the counter, to the legal pad I'd slid under the mail. You okay? I'm fine. I lied. The way people do when they're taking the measure of a hard truth and deciding to swallow it whole instead of spitting it across the table. You hungry? Starving, she said, and for a second her voice sounded like the woman I'd married, the one who could laugh through a busted water heater. I made eggs. We ate them like co-workers. That week, I let routine do reconnaissance. Kelly trained every evening at 6. She'd kiss my cheek, grab her earbuds, and bounce on her toes like a boxer who doesn't believe in head movement. I'd watch from the porch until she rounded the corner. The watch on my wrist had a stopwatch I never used before. I used it now. 40 minutes, sometimes 50. Never a full hour. Always the same song stuck in my head when she returned. whatever had been echoing from her earbuds when she left. One night, she came back humming, "I will follow you into the dark," which, okay, was on the nose. I started running too. Not physically, administratively. Paper trails run faster than legs. First, the race calendar. Our town's Parks and Rec page listed every 5K and chicken run fundraiser from now till Thanksgiving. Kelly had circled 3 on the fridge. The next big one was the Cuyahoga Valley Summer Series, River Loop. Sponsor slots were open. Second, the printers. There's a shop on Main where the owner plays blues records and complains about the school board while laminating church bulletins. I know him because I pick up job site permits there, and because he keeps a coffee can under the counter labeled Legal Defense that everyone treats like a swear jar. I put a design on a thumb drive and slid it across the counter. "I need 500 of these, 4-color, heavy stock." He popped the drive into his ancient PC and squinted. His eyebrows climbed. "Spicy. Community-minded," I said. "Anonymous. You want your sponsor name or not? Use a friend of the finish line. And tag Steel City Strength's handle. They like engagement." He tisked, appreciative in the way men get when they smell a story on the wind. Pick up Friday. Third, the Friend Network. Our town's group chat might as well be the evening news. I sent a feeler to Danny, a mutual who works nights at the diner and mornings at the shelter, and somehow knows the outcome of every argument before it's had. She's also the kind of person who believes in second chances for dogs, not for men who call themselves Jai and wear malice. That's from another life. We don't have that guy here. We have Mark with a tiger stripe tattoo. "You hear anything about Steel City?" I texted. "Always," she replied. "You looking for gossip or salvation?" "Gossip that saves." She sent back a photo from IG, Mark's latest post, him shirtless in front of a fan, captioned "Hustle never sleeps." Tanya had commented a simple bicep emoji. Underneath, 20 women had left fire and hearts. Kelly wasn't among them, not publicly. That was something, and also nothing. On Thursday, I followed Kelly's route in my truck, keeping an inconspicuous distance like a bad TV detective. At the third block, she cut left, then right, then slipped behind the hardware store to a side street that dumped onto the old rail spur. I parked 2 streets over and cut through the alley, peeking from behind a dumpster like I'd lost my self-respect in there somewhere. 5 minutes later, the black sedan slid by and stopped at the far curb. Kelly jogged up, leaned against the window, and laughed at something inside. She checked her watch, a gesture she'd adopted now that time had become decorative, and got in. I didn't chase. I took a photo, the kind that looks like a mistake if you want it to. Grainy, the angle off, the reflection of the street lights turning the glass into a mirror. But the hoodie is hers, and the laugh is a silhouette you don't forget. At home, I printed the photo and put it in the drawer with our tax returns. You might never need a copy of Schedule C, but when you do, you're glad it's there. Same with Truth. Friday, I picked up the flyers. The printer handed me the box like a bartender sliding over a drink you didn't order but very much wanted. The top sheet read exactly as I'd laid it out. Local inspiration, survived 2 affairs, still chasing love. Join us in cheering on Kelly, last name, running for second chances. Sponsored by a friend of the finish line. At Steel City Strength OH #RunTrue. Below the headline, a cropped photo of Kelly from last summer at the lake, the one she'd posted with the caption, "New Chapter." Sunglasses, smile, shoulders like a promise. It would scan heroic to strangers. To anyone who knew, it would ring like a bell. Bold, the printer said. "You're sure about 2? She cheated in our first year," I said, voice even. "Forgave it then. Different guy, different shoes. Same stride." He nodded, not judging. Our town believes in the right to swing a hammer until the nail finally sets. I spent Saturday morning decorating the city with my anonymous goodwill. Coffee shop corkboard, pinned. Library community wall, pinned. Grocery store vestibule, pinned. Laundromat, bait shop, VFW. Barber, the window of the treadmill showroom no one ever goes inside because nobody in this town buys a machine you can run on for free outside. I tagged at Steel City Strength OH on Instagram from a burner account and sent the post to the race organizer with a note. "Thought you'd want to boost this. Great human interest angle." By evening, the flyer was doing laps around town faster than any of us could. The gym reposted, because exposure is exposure, and Tanya is too good at business to miss a chance at community shine. Kelly's phone pinged so often at dinner that she put it face down and ate 2 bites in silence, then 3 fast ones like she had somewhere to be. "You okay?" I asked, the same tone she'd used with me. "Just a lot of messages," she said. "About what?" She set her fork down very carefully. "The race. Someone put my picture on a flyer." I kept the brow neutral. "Sounds nice. It says things," she said. "Do you want to talk about any of them?" She looked at me then, a look I'd only seen twice. Once when her father died, and once when she spilled coffee on the appraisal papers for our house and thought she'd ruined something that couldn't be fixed. "Do you know who did it?" "I'm not the only person in town who thinks you're an inspiration," I said, and left the rest of that sentence sitting in the air between us like a plank over water. She stood up, took her plate to the sink, and started washing it as if she could scrub the day off. That night, she slept facing the wall. I lay awake and counted the seconds between her breaths. 10,000 small decisions had carried us here. I was done making small ones. Sunday after church, the people who like to hug hugged us tighter. The people who prefer nods nodded longer. Pastor Mike shook my hand like there was a message hidden in his palm. In the parking lot, Tanya approached, sunglasses, ponytail, a sweatshirt with the gym's logo. Up close, she had that sturdy calm of someone who knows where the fire extinguishers are. "Hey," she said. "You're Kelly's husband, right?" "I'm Tanya from Steel City." "I know," I said. She adjusted her sunglasses. "Wild flyer. A beat. You didn't make that, did you?" "No," I said. "But I've seen wilder." She studied my face for a long second, the way you examine a blueprint and decide whether the math holds. "If you ever want a guest pass, come by. On the house." "That generous for everyone?" "For most," she said, then leaned in a fraction. "For some, it's insurance." She walked away before I could ask her to define the deductible. I watched her climb into a silver SUV, alone. Back home, I opened the race app and sponsored a mile marker in the next event under the same alias. I uploaded the flyer image, paid the fee, and wrote the dedication line they asked for. "To everyone who runs in a straight line." The confirmation email arrived instantly. I forwarded it to my burner and then to the race's general inbox, in case anyone missed it the first time. Kelly spent the afternoon stretching in the living room, which looked a lot like scrolling and sighing. At 5, she said she needed air and went out for a light jog. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from Danny. "Your art is trending," it read. A link to the town Facebook group. One of the admins had posted a photo of the flyer with the caption, "We should support people turning their lives around." Half the comments clapped. The other half asked whose lives needed turning exactly. Small towns are bad at vague. At 6:30, Kelly came back red-eyed, took a shower hot enough to fog the hallway, then sat on the edge of the bed wrapped in a towel. "People are tagging me," she said. "People tag what they can see," I said. "You could make a statement. Write your own story." "What would I say?" she asked, genuinely curious, as if there might be an answer that turned everything into a misunderstanding about protein bars. I shrugged. "Maybe start with the part where you veered left when everyone else went right." Her mouth opened, closed. She looked down at her hands, at the faint tremor she couldn't quite will away. "I don't know what you think you saw. I saw enough to know I can read," I said. "And I can write." Her jaw set. "So this is a game?" "It's a race," I said. "I'm just making sure the course is clearly marked." She stood, the towel knotting tighter. "You always do this," she said, voice low. "You turn everything into a project." "And you," I said, quiet as a finish line tape, "turned us into your warm-up." She left the room. Doors closed softly, then not softly. I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, counting cracks like mile markers. There's a thing that happens when you stop pretending. Sound gets clearer. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Danny, just 3 words. "Coach's wife saw." I allowed myself one small, private smile. Not triumph. Just acknowledgement. The starter pistol had finally fired. There's a sweet spot between rage and strategy where your brain gets dangerous. I'd found it that morning after the charity run, sitting in my truck with an empty coffee cup and the faint smell of race day banana peels. Kelly had no idea I'd seen her little side detour into the black sedan, and I had no intention of tipping her off just yet. You see, people like Kelly live for controlling the narrative. The "you misunderstood," and "you're just being insecure" defense. She'd pull those like a magician pulls scarves out of a hat. If I confronted her now, I get some story about a cramp, a ride home, maybe her coach's wife being in the back seat. No proof, no closure. And she'd double down on the secret meetups. So instead, I played dumb. At dinner that night, she was all sunshine, talking about her best race yet, and how she was really connecting with her training group. I nodded, chewing my overcooked steak, smiling just enough to pass for a supportive husband. I didn't mention the sedan. Didn't mention Mark's perfect little timing. I just told her I was proud. And I was proud of my own restraint. The next week, I started supporting her runs more. I'd drop her off at the trailhead, wave goodbye, then take the long way home. Except my long way home involved a quick swing past the same side street where I'd seen the sedan. Twice, I caught them there, pretending to stretch near the curb before disappearing into that car like clockwork. Now, here's the thing, the sedan's changed. First week, black. Second week, silver. Same guy, different ride. I figured either Mark was running a dealership on the side, or he was trying not to get recognized. Which meant he knew this wasn't innocent, too. By week 3, I had the basics. Kelly trained every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Mark was always coaching those days, no matter what the weather. Their actual runs were roughly the length of a coffee break at best. The final piece I needed was a way to expose this without looking like the jealous husband lurking in bushes with binoculars. And I found it, at the grocery store bulletin board, of all places. Someone had posted a flyer for the Rust Belt Charity Half Marathon. Bright colors, smiling runners, inspirational quotes. And at the bottom, sponsored by local businesses, space available. I took a photo, emailed the organizer, and said I wanted to sponsor a runner anonymously. They loved the idea. Apparently no one had ever done that before. I told them I had the perfect person in mind. Local inspiration, never gives up, survived 2 affairs, still chasing love. Yes, 2 affairs. Technically it was one that I knew of, but the number wasn't the point. It was the implication. And I knew. In a town this small, implication was everything. Within a week, the organizers sent me the mock-up of the flyer. Kelly's smiling race photo, one she'd posted on her Facebook last year, was front and center. My little tagline sat just below her name like it was part of her official biography. They printed hundreds. I paid extra to have them distributed at gyms, coffee shops, and even slipped under wiper blades in the parking lot of her favorite yoga studio. By the time Kelly saw one, I'd already spotted 3 pinned up at her gym. She came home that night holding the flyer like it was radioactive. "What is this?" she demanded, slapping it on the counter. I picked it up, squinted at it like I was reading it for the first time. "Looks like you got sponsored." "That's great, babe." Her voice cracked. "Sponsored? It says." I cut her off with a shrug. "Well, I mean, you are still chasing love. It's poetic." She just stared at me, mouth half open, like she wasn't sure if she was being insulted or honored. And that was the beauty of it. I hadn't named names, hadn't accused her of anything. But every person who saw that flyer would fill in the blanks exactly the way I wanted. I knew this was just the warm-up lap. The real race, the one where I'd break her perfect little public image in front of the whole town, was still coming. And I'd make sure she didn't see the finish line until she was already crossing it. The thing about a small Rust Belt town is, gossip doesn't need an engine. It coasts downhill on its own. By the end of that first week, I didn't need to plant flyers anymore. People were doing it for me. Someone taped one to the counter at Rita's Diner right by the register, so every customer ordering a patty melt got to read about Kelly's inspirational romantic resume while they waited for their coffee refill. I kept my head down and played the role of oblivious husband. At the hardware store, an old guy slapped me on the back and said, "You're a good sport." At church, Mrs. Haggerty from 2 pews up gave me this little pity smile like she'd just watched a dog get hit by a slow-moving bicycle. Kelly, on the other hand, was crumbling. She tried to go to the gym 2 days after the flyers hit, but I guess the whispers in the locker room got too loud, because she came home 20 minutes later and slammed the bedroom door. I didn't go up. I wanted her to marinate in it. 2 days later, she made her first move to control the damage. She went on Facebook and posted this long, self-righteous status about how she was stepping back from the race for mental health reasons, and how the community should focus on uplifting each other instead of tearing people down. She never addressed the tagline directly, but anyone with a pulse knew what she was talking about. The comments section split neatly into 2 camps. Half the people sent her heart emojis and stay strong messages. The other half, The ones who remembered she'd just suddenly started training with some shirtless wonder last year shared it with captions like, "Oh, so that's what this is about." I figured that was my cue to crank things up. Not by adding anything new. No, by doing nothing at all. Because doing nothing meant letting the town's rumor mill work uninterrupted, grinding her reputation into powder. Then came the sucker punch I didn't see coming. And I mean that in the best way possible. Channel 8 News. Our sleepy little local station decided to run a human interest segment on the charity half marathon. And of course, they covered the story of a beloved local runner withdrawing for mental health reasons after hurtful public speculation. They even showed her race photo from the flyer on the screen. Guess who was watching that segment while folding laundry in her living room? Mark's wife. And guess who apparently didn't know her husband had been coaching Kelly on anything but his Garmin watch? 3 days later, word got out that she'd filed for divorce. Not just divorce, she'd also filed a lawsuit against the gym where he worked, citing emotional distress and misuse of business resources. The kicker? She owned the gym. That's when I realized I'd never have to lift another finger. Kelly stopped wearing her running gear altogether. Mark vanished from the trail. The gym put out some vague statement about staffing changes and upholding professional standards. And in the quiet spaces between all that drama, I kept living my life, going to work, mowing the lawn, drinking beer on the porch. No shouting match. No tearful confessions. Just a slow, methodical demolition of her public image until there was nothing left but the wreckage she built herself. She thought she was running toward something better. Turns out, she was just running straight into a wall I'd built one flyer at a time. And I never even had to break a sweat. By the time autumn rolled into town, Kelly was a ghost in her own life. She stopped going to the diner, stopped checking in at the yoga studio. Even her beloved Saturday training runs evaporated. Every time I caught a glimpse of her in the kitchen, she had that same distant look, like she was replaying all the conversations she wished she could rewrite. The irony? I never once mentioned the flyers again. I didn't have to. In a place like ours, people remember. Every time someone in the grocery store glanced at her, every little pause in conversation when she walked into the bank, those were my revenge letters, signed and delivered. But I wasn't done. See, part of me wanted her to know, really know, that I'd been behind the whole thing. Not just suspect it. Understand it, like the sharp edge of a blade pressing against skin. And I wanted her to figure it out in public, where she couldn't rewrite the story. The charity half marathon she'd withdrawn from still went ahead in October. The weather was unseasonably nice. Crisp air, the smell of burning leaves in the distance, a clear blue sky. I wasn't running, but I was on the volunteer team, handing out water at mile marker 2. The organizers had put together a banner for the finish line, thanking all the sponsors. My anonymous sponsorship was still on there. They hadn't changed the tagline. Still local inspiration, survived 2 affairs, still chasing love. When she arrived, not to run, but to watch, she saw it. I watched her spot that banner from 50 yards away. She froze. The people she'd been walking with drifted ahead, and she just stared. That was my cue. I walked up, holding a stack of race maps like I was just doing my volunteer job. Stopped next to her. Looked up at the banner. Hell of a coincidence, huh? I said, keeping my voice casual. She turned slowly, eyes narrowing. You. I gave a half smile. Me? Her jaw tightened. You did this. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence did all the work. The crowd noise around us suddenly felt louder. Runners' footsteps on asphalt, the tinny PA announcements, the cheer of a few spectators. But it was just us in that little pocket of realization. She shook her head, maybe to convince herself she still had control. But her voice cracked when she said, "You're sick." I shrugged. "You're slow." Her mouth opened, maybe to curse me, maybe to try some half-hearted denial. But before she could, one of the volunteers called my name. I walked away without looking back, the way you walk away from a fire you know will burn itself out without your help. The rest of the race was uneventful, except for the fact that I saw her leave early, slipping away down Main Street before the first runners even hit the finish line. And that's when I knew the public arena wasn't her territory anymore. It was mine. But the story wasn't over. The next week, the local paper ran a tiny article about the gym lawsuit. Nothing front page, just a small business section blurb. But in a town where everyone reads the paper in the diner while they wait for their eggs, small print, is still loud. The piece mentioned Mark by name, and it didn't shy away from the fact that his wife was suing him for inappropriate relationships with clients. People didn't need me to draw the lines. They drew them themselves. And in the back of my mind, I was already planning the last mile, the moment I'd break whatever scraps of her composure were left. Not by shouting, not by proving her wrong, by showing her that while she'd been pretending to run, I'd been moving at my own pace, and I was already waiting at the finish line. Winter came early that year, the kind where the wind slides under your coat like it's got a vendetta. The leaves were gone, the days shorter, and the sidewalks littered with rock salt and grit. It was the kind of season where most folks hunker down, keep their heads low, and wait for spring. But not me. I'd been patient long enough, and it was time to cross that last finish line. Kelly was still in the house, but the air between us had turned to permafrost. We spoke only when logistics required it. Groceries, bills, who was taking the trash out. She'd given up her training entirely. No more neon tights, no more playlists full of ballads, no more Mark. Not because she'd suddenly found a moral compass, but because she was too embarrassed to risk being spotted in public without total control of the narrative. That, right there, was my opening. The town's annual winter warm-up gala was coming up, a charity dinner where all the so-called respectable folks gathered at the VFW to drink overpriced wine and gossip under the guise of civic engagement. Kelly loved that event. Every year, she bought a new dress for it, used it to remind people she was still in the game socially. I knew she'd be there, and I knew exactly how to use it. I called up a buddy who still owed me a favor from when I'd helped him move an entire garage worth of rusted-out car parts. He ran the print shop in town, the one that had quietly made all the original flyers for the half marathon. I need a couple of table place cards, I told him. Real classy. Gold trim, nice font. One for me, one for Kelly. No problem. Names. For mine, just Tyler. For hers, right. Kelly, local inspiration. Survived 2 affairs, still chasing love. He laughed so hard I thought the phone might drop out of his hand. You're still at it? Just finishing what I started. The night of the gala, the VFW was decked out in twinkle lights and white tablecloths. The kind of fake elegance that fools no one but still makes everyone sit up straighter. I arrived early, slipped the cards onto our assigned table, and took a seat where I could watch the door. When Kelly walked in, she was wearing one of those deep green dresses that make people whisper. She scanned the room, spotted me, and pasted on a brittle smile before heading over. She didn't notice the card right away, too busy air-kissing a couple of people at the next table. Then she sat down. Her hand froze halfway to her glass of water. Her eyes dropped to the gold-edged card in front of her, and for a long moment, she didn't move. Then she looked up at me. No words, just that look, a mix of rage, humiliation, and the dawning horror that I wasn't just lucky in my timing. I'd been orchestrating this from the beginning. Really? She said finally, her voice low enough not to carry but sharp enough to cut glass. I smiled like we were sharing a private joke. You always liked recognition. Her lips pressed into a tight line, but I saw the flicker in her eyes. She knew she couldn't make a scene here without feeding the beast. Any reaction would be read, repeated, and reinterpreted 100 times before Monday morning. So she did what she does best when cornered. She got up and left. Only this time, instead of sympathy, I watched heads turn and eyebrows raise as she made her way to the exit. People noticed. People always notice. By the end of the night, I'd had 3 different folks stop by my table to ask if everything was all right, in that way small-town people do when they already know the answer. I didn't give them anything. Just a smile, a shrug, and a sip of my wine. The next week, I heard she'd moved in with her sister 2 towns over. No dramatic fight, no divorce papers yet, just gone. Mark, from what I gathered, was living in some dingy apartment above a bait shop after his wife cleaned him out in court. The gym was under new management, which everyone knew meant it was circling the drain. And me? I kept my same routine. Work, porch beers, the occasional poker night. Every so often, I'd see one of those original flyers still pinned to a bulletin board, edges curled and sun-faded, and I'd feel that quiet satisfaction you only get when you know you've run the long game and won. She thought she was the runner. Turns out, I was the one who set the course, and I never even had to break into a jog to leave her behind. Subscribe to the channel